come once again to discuss things.
Hi everyone! Welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I am Sydpart2, and joining me today is the one, the only, unless he's not really the one and the only, Captain Logan.
Greetings!
Hey, Cap.
Hey, how's it going, man?
Oh, it's going good. I see you're reversing questions on this, so that's fine. I can roll with it. So anyway, we're continuing our mini-series talking about Star Trek episodes, one-shot, or simple one-off story Star Trek episodes from different series. And today, Captain Logan had me watch an episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine called Civil Defense. So let's go ahead and get started. What made you think this episode would be a good, accessible thing?
Well, DS9 is tough, because there are a lot of more accessible episodes I could have picked as far as good one-off stories. But the problem is, most of them would focus on a single character and also not give you a good sense of what the premise of the show is and what the general feel of DS9 is. And I kind of wanted to give you more of a sense of what Deep Space Nine was like.
Okay.
And so I picked Civil Defense because I thought that as a story, it stood on its own enough where you could follow what was going on, but it also featured most of the major characters and was about the things that Deep Space Nine is at large about.
Okay. Let me see how much I got right. So the ship they're on, or space station rather, it was owned by this race called the Cardassians?
Yes.
Which, wow, how that word has changed in meaning. I could not help but keep thinking about Kim Kardashian, even though I don't know who that is. So the ship used to be owned by them. They gave it up as part of a treaty, or maybe lost it in a war somehow. And now we have Starfleet running it.
Yeah, well, in fact, the Bajorans are running it. Starfleet is there to kind of facilitate and help out. So Starfleet is running kind of the operations of the station, but it's still owned and at large operated by the Bajorans. Okay. After the occupation. And the reason Starfleet has stepped in is mostly because of the wormhole that has opened right next to it that leads to another quadrant of the galaxy. And that doesn't really factor into this story. But
I was wondering, that's one of the things I noticed right from the beginning is they really wanted to show off they knew how to use CGI, and with that intro, it's so long, and it seemed kind of superfluous once they threw in the wormhole, or black hole as it looked from the intro.
The difficulty with Deep Space Nine's intro is that it's doing exactly what all of the other intros of Star Trek do, except that it's a space station that is stationary. And so all that they can really do is take a camera and move around it a lot. And it's silly to have an intro that long just looking at a space station. But that's what they did. They wanted it to look uniform with the rest of the shows. So that's what...
I mean, it was cool to look at. Just like, it's always a problem when I begin to wonder how long it's going on. Even if it's only a minute or so long, it's a problem when I begin to think about how long it is.
First time, it's awesome because they had so much intricate architecture with that design.
Oh, I mean, it looks fantastic. I do like the design of it. It's an interesting shape, interesting textures on it and stuff too.
So the station was built by the Cardassians, and like you said earlier, it used to be a Cardassian station. And you'll notice both in what it looks like on the outside and also some of the architecture inside, although you didn't get to see a lot of the station outside of really small rooms and ops in this episode. A lot of the architecture is actually based on the anatomy of Cardassians and the Cardassian neck ridges.
Oh, interesting.
Which is a really cool idea.
Yeah, I did like the way that once we did see the villain-ish character in this episode, I like the makeup that they did with that neck ridge. That was really well done and looked it was really subtle but still looked really good.
The Cardassians and the Bajorans both were actually introduced in Next Generation. I think like a 4th season episode called The Wounded, which is an OBrien-centered episode. It revolves around OBrien, which is the reason that they took OBrien and put him in DS9. He was a recurring character in TNG. And what's really interesting is that the guy who plays Garrick Dukat, who is in fact not just the villain for this episode, but the overarching villain for the entire show.
Okay.
Dukat is played by Mark Alamo, who actually played the first Cardassian we ever saw, and he's a different character, but is pretty much the same character.
Interesting.
Yeah.
No, I really enjoyed how well the makeup and the effects blended in this one. It's really looks very modern and was very well handled, actually. Let's just briefly summarize what exactly is going on in this episode for anyone who hasn't seen it in a while or is thinking about watching it. So the Commander OBrien? What's the commander's name again?
Sisko.
Oh, my bad.
No,
I don't know where that came from. So the Commander Sisko and his son and an engineer whose name I forget.
That's OBrien.
Oh, okay.
That's earlier, yeah.
That's right.
That's the guy they took out of TNG and put in Deep Space Nine from the very beginning. He's the chief engineer.
All right, yeah. So they're working on a room that used to basically just be kind of like a sweatshop kind of area.
Right.
Trying to convert it into something else. The son inadvertently triggers a security lockdown set up in case of revolt in this room, and that's where we see the villains start to pop up and threaten to kill them thinking that they're these slave workers, as a measure to quell the rebellion, and as they try to escape to save their own lives, they put the ship in more danger. And that's basically what the episode follows, is trying to defuse this situation of this security program.
And of course that video of Dukat is all part of an elaborate computer program, and is not actually Dukat talking in real time. Which is amusing, because if you think about it, that means that Dukat sat in a room for hours and hours and hours. And
recording all these different videotapes.
Yeah, it recorded a response to every possible scenario of revolt. I love that. I always find that really distracting watching this episode.
Yeah, I thought about that the second time around, not gonna lie. One of the things that I, like, just the moment that I found the most inadvertently hilarious was when Dukat is on the ship and he's like, well, I'll be back about 5 minutes before the ship's gonna explode, and then we can negotiate again. And he's like, alright, one to transport, and then that, like, message comes up, it's like, you're a coward, all your codes have been overridden, you're gonna stay here and die.
Yeah, no, that's not inadvertently hilarious, that's just hilarious.
Well, no, it's just that, like, moment where all it really needed was for him to say, well, this is awkward.
Yeah, it's fun to see Dukat embarrassed, because it doesn't happen very often, and after all of that posturing, and after he puts Kira in a really rough spot, and it looks like he might actually be able to get away with a pseudo-Cardassian occupation of a Starfleet-run space station. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that scene is great, and it's one of those things where it ends up becoming less of an important episode because he's not able to do all of that, but it's not really about moving on the ongoing story so much with Bajor and Cardassia, as much as it's about who all of these people are and how they feel about each other. Which is a lot of why I picked it, just because I felt like it would be a good introduction to the whole Cardassian-Bajoran conflict and all of that, and the stuff with. And I mean, it's a little bit tough because if you've never watched DS9 before, there's a lot of characters.
Yeah, I'm hearing myself echo.
And so it was a little tough to tell. While I was, watching it again after I picked this, I sort of felt like, wow, I don't know if I should pick this one. Because the whole time I was thinking, I don't know how much of this Ian is really going to pick up on.
I picked up on it fairly well.
Good.
I always forget names, but that's just a personal thing.
No, absolutely, me too.
It worked out really well. I got a general impression of what all was going on. It would have, the only thing I didn't get is the guy with that really intricate face makeup that was supposed to be like a con man or whatever. He came off a bit annoying, but I got the feeling that he could be charming if I got to know him.
You're talking about Garrick. Well, Garrick, it's funny you say intricate face makeup because I mean he's got the same makeup Dukat has. They're both the same species. Oh no!
No.
You're talking about Quark. Yeah, the Ferengi who runs the bar on the station, right? Yeah, he's less annoying if you're used to him, because he's hilarious.
Yeah, it seemed like he gave me a couple laughs, but it just took a while to get there. Do you know who the actor is that was playing the security guard? The security guy that was stuck in the room with him?
Odo is played by Rene Auberjonois.
Huh, I gotta look him up, because it looks like... It's hard to tell with that makeup on.
Yeah, you've seen Auberjonois in lots of stuff. He's a character actor. He's also a stage actor. He was on Boston Legal with Shatner, if you ever watched that show.
That's what I thought so. I thought that looked like him. It was hard to tell with the makeup. I love Boston Legal, and yeah, he's one of the main board members. God, he's so good in that show, too. It's weird that he ended up on not... a Star Trek series that didn't have Shatner in it, but then worked with Shatner later.
Well, I think the fact that he was a Star Trek alum probably had something to do with his casting in that show. Because Boston Legal, not that I watched a whole lot of it or anything, but had a surprising amount of Trek alum in it. And this is neither here nor there, but an unrelated show with a similar title that was on in the early 2000s, Boston Public, starred Jerry Ryan, who played 7 of 9 in Voyager.
Interesting. No, I love Boston Legal, and I kept looking at the dude and like, is that Paul? Because I don't know actors' names either. I don't know characters' names, and I don't know actors' names, so occasionally, when I do start to learn them, I'll say, Hal Jordan's sitting there talking to Blake Lively, and it gets really confusing for people.
Yeah, I think Rene Auberjonois has even played on stage with Ian McKellen.
Oh, interesting.
So I could be mistaken about that.
Uh-huh.
But I think I remember that. He's done a lot of Shakespeare and stuff.
I mean, he's a really good actor. I'm going to say this now. If you haven't seen Boston Legal, check it out. He's good. Just check Boston Legal out. It's Shatner. It's some of Shatner's best acting, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I've not watched a great deal of it, but I liked what I saw of it.
Well, it was such a great it was such a good character for him to play because it's kind of parallels what people think about his life is. He's this actor he plays this character that was this lawyer who back in the 50s, 60s, 70s was amazing and just had the best reputation ever, and he never lost a case. But now that he's an older man, he's actually losing his mind due to Alzheimer's very, very slowly, and you get to see him kind of not being able to live up to his reputation. It's a really interesting character dynamic. And also he has guns. Just shoots people. It's awesome. Usually shooting people is not awesome, but in this case. Sorry, I got distracted by Boston Legal talk. Alright, so back to Deep Space Nine. So I don't know, I did find this episode reasonably accessible as long as I was willing to try to, play catch up with what was going on and piece it together in my head. Are there any complaints you know of about it that, we should kind of talk about?
Well, nothing major that, you being a first-timer to the series would really pick up on or care about. My big one is that, and this is even less the episode and more later on, Garrick and Dukat have this really interesting dynamic. And the thing you have to realize about Garrick, the other Cardassian, who in the episode, who is a tailor who lives aboard the station and has this really mysterious, murky background that we never completely know everything about. Although we get more of it later on, but he's always mysterious, and he's exiled from Cardassia. We don't know why, and he's the only Cardassian who lives on the station. So of course he's kind of shunned by a lot of people, and he and Dr. Bashir have lunch together all the time just because Bashir is very curious about him, and they're sort of friends, and that dynamic is always really cool. And frankly, gave Bashir something to do, because up until about season 5, he was sort of totally pointless. He pretty much just...
No one ever got sick.
Pretty much just, he was the doctor. Well, he did things because he's the doctor, but I just mean that, he was really two-dimensional. His whole character was he eats lunch with Garrick, and he's really hot for Dax. That was his whole character for the longest time. But anyway, so Dukat comes aboard, and this becomes a really big thing, for a really big moment for fans at the time, because suddenly we're getting all of this interplay between Dukat and Garrick, which we've never had before, and we've never seen them on screen together. We don't know what their background together is, and they start speaking in this kind of Cardassian old war code, and we can pick up on bits and pieces of what they're saying, but ultimately we don't really know everything. And the worst part about it is that they never pay that off in the series.
Aw. And that's disappointing, because that was kind of cool to figure out, what? Did this guy, stab the dude's dad in the back or something?
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of really... Yeah, and to start talking about Dukat's father, we never know anything about his parents. And they talk about that, we're just like, whoa, this is, getting involved, and we're learning things. And learning anything about Garrick is a big deal, because he's so closed off, and you can never tell when he's lying or not, and he's really deceptive. And he is, by the way, my wife's favorite character of the show.
Okay.
And one of mine. Garrick is fantastically interesting. And anyway, so they never pay that off. I mean, they pay off a lot of stuff for Garrick, but they never pay off the Garrick-Dukat rivalry. And that was always really sort of sad. Otherwise, just as far as stuff in singularly inside the episode, there are some really neat little character things, little character moments inside of the episode, but for the most part, it's just a lot of people problem solving.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fun, but after a while, I think it gets a little bit long.
Yeah, I can kind of see what you're getting at there, because it does kind of okay, now we solved this problem, now there's this other part. I'm are they in a video game? Because that feels very much like a video game puzzle.
It absolutely feels like that. And I mean, it's cool because, it makes sense to have, a big problem-solving kind of episode on a station like this that has this program that they didn't know still embedded in it that, causes all of this. But it was sort of like watching a bunch of Starfleet officers playing a role-playing game. And okay, so we come up to this gate and there's a big troll. How are we going to get past him? Let's roll our D20. That's really kind of how it feels. So I guess what I'm saying is, with certain characters, it was more involved because I cared more about them and was more invested in them. I'm always less interested in what's going on with everybody in Ops, because those are the least interesting characters at this point in the series, all put together in one room. And as soon as Dukat shows up and he's dealing with Garrick, that's all really interesting. But, Dax constantly going, I have this new out-of-the-box idea, and I have this other out-of-the-box idea. And it's yeah, that's your whole character. You're a scientist who can problem solve, and that's what we know about.
Was Dax the one with the, spots on her neck, or is... Okay. Yeah, she didn't really come off that interesting to me.
There's a lot of just functional character stuff going on. The things with Sisko and his son are a little bit more interesting, but even Sisko doesn't get real involved and cool until, a season or two after this.
Well, what I think could have improved the episode, to be honest, is if they were able to communicate the entire time. And if it was just one problem they were solving as opposed to, it's just a single problem that keeps getting worse somehow.
Yeah, exactly.
If just if, like, alright, the gas problem is fine, because it makes sense that he'd gas the workers before blowing up the ship. But,
they have an urgent reason to get out of that room.
Yeah, I like that the room is, like, the gas concern, that's fine. But after they get out, it should go immediately to the ship's about to blow up, as opposed to the habitat room's about to be blown up, or about to be gassed, and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, can we just move just a little faster than this? Just up the stakes early on?
It definitely feels like one of those episodes that is drawn out a little bit because they don't quite have enough story to tell. And by about the 20-minute mark, Dukat shows up, and we're like, oh, okay, that's why we're doing all of this. And then it gets involved in engaging. But before that, there is, I think the premise is getting us through the episode, but only so far, you know? It feels a lot like a TNG episode that's actually not quite as good as this, called Booby Trap, appropriately.
Uh-huh.
And has, and does the same thing where it sections off different groups of people in the ship, and they have to figure out how to get out of where they are right now. And this is a better episode than Booby Trap because it actually has some character stuff in it, and through these people trying to solve this problem, we get a little bit of development for them. Whereas in Booby Trap, it's pretty much just these characters that we know already trying to get out of, you know, or not Booby Trap, I'm sorry, Disaster is the episode. And although that does have the really fun thing of Picard having to deal with little kids. And that's always fun. And there's this little kid that's with him that he makes the executive officer in charge of radishes, which never gets old. Anyway, but I don't know. That's about all I had to say about this one. I just thought that it might be the best introduction to all of these people in this show.
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem with the inability of them to communicate is it stretches out the episode, but also makes it paced in kind of an awkward way. In that, like, it seems like Sisko and O'Brien are in that one mining room, whatever, for quite a while.
Yeah.
It makes the pacing just a little off. I noticed that more the second time around, to be fair to the show. So it does work. Like, the first time I watched it was very, you know, edge of your seat kind of suspense. So that was well done. It makes it feel a little iffy in parts when you start to think about it. Then the only other thing I really kind of felt was awkward, even though they said it before they go into that little, I guess, circuit access hallway thing, that if one drops, we leave the other behind. It felt really weird to see a Starfleet commander just leave one of the other guys back there, you know?
Well, and that kind of marks the difference between Deep Space Nine and some of the other shows, is that they're out on the edge of the frontier, and they have to deal with more of those kinds of situations more often. So, like the rules are of what Starfleet or what Star Trek was before this are stretched a little bit in Deep Space Nine. Because they wanted a show where you could have like more interpersonal conflicts and things than you had before. Because it doesn't feel like a utopia when you're in the middle of this space station. Well, because it's not a utopia. You're in between these two planets of people that hate each other, and one used to oppress and occupy the other one. You know, and so anyway, I think that especially by because this is third season, we're a little bit later in the show now, and I think that not to say that these are people that don't help each other and don't have the Starfleet ideals, but they become a little bit more used to that kind of moral ambiguity every now and again. And I also, you know, at least like Sisko comes out of that. The whole thing is, he probably would have killed them both if he had grabbed them and dragged them through, right? So it was like...
Fair enough. I'm just saying, it felt a little weird.
Yeah, and I guess my point is, it feels weird to you because it's the sort of thing that TOS and TNG would have never gotten away with.
Mm-hmm. Or just from what I've seen of Star Trek so far, it felt out of place.
Later on, we get... They're able to do more of that kind of... I don't know what I'm trying to say, human stuff where you get in these sticky situations where you have to make a choice and it's the lesser of two evils. There's an episode toward the end of TNG that again, this is after Roddenberry's died and after the whole, we can't have Starfleet officers like actually make these sorts of mistakes kind of things. You get to this episode in season 7 where Troy has to take this test in order to be promoted to be a commander, where the point of the test is to learn when to command an officer to go to his death to save the rest of the ship.
Oh, wow.
And so they start getting, a little bit more bold in dealing with those kinds of moral questions, which is great. And that's what Star Trek does the best, is giving you two sides of a moral equation and making you make up your own mind. Anyway, so yeah, I like that kind of scenario. But at least Sisko gets out of there, and he calls him. He's trying to make sure he's still alive.
Yeah, it would have been a little awkward if he just kept crawling. He's like, well, fuck that dude.
I think he would have climbed right back in as soon as he had put in the thing in the computer.
Yeah, I agree, and I mean, it's not like it's unconceivable that he could have survived that long.
He was still in visual distance, like he could still see him. It'd be different if they were like out in the desert and he just said, and he left him behind and walked 5 miles.
Yeah, I agree. I was a little shocked to see that happen. I was like, okay, this dude fell, now he's gonna go back there and get it. It's like, wait, he's not going back.
Yeah. But
oh, wow, did Cap have me watch a character death episode?
I think that you had that experience because you're sitting there going, wait, I didn't think you could do this in Star Trek.
Yeah, it was surprising. And I mean, it's not necessarily a bad thing about the show. It's just different than what I was expecting.
Sisko is so much different from, say, Kirk or Picard. I mean, Sisko's answer to every situation, at least when it's a human antagonist kind of situation, is punch the dude in the face. That's Sisko. You like later on, God, you see Sisko punch so many people.
Oh, that's cool. Okay.
So anyway.
Well, I think we've gone long enough. Yeah, it's about 20 to 30 minutes, I think. Final thoughts on it for me is it's really enjoyable, and I can see why you picked it, especially given your rationale for it. But I can see that it isn't continuity heavy, especially for the series that's supposed to be very continuity heavy. So it was well planned out, and the villain was really cool. I was like, wow, this guy's really awesome and really intimidating, up until, oops.
Yeah, Dukat is my favorite villain, maybe out of all of Star Trek. He's fantastic.
Oh wow, that's cool.
And
he's just a really suave guy. I liked it.
Yeah.
Anyway, do you have any final thoughts you want to say on the episode?
No, I think I'm good. I mean, the only thing is, you mentioned how continuity-heavy DS9 is, and more so for the time that it was put out than it would feel now. I mean, when you get used to shows where you have to watch every single episode and there's not any filler standout episodes like Lost or Breaking Bad or something, you'd go back and watch this and say, well, this doesn't feel that...
I mean, yeah, you couldn't you couldn't just jump in on any episode of Game of Thrones or something like that.
DS9 has a whole lot of singular kinds of episodes, but it's always within a context. So if you watched an episode that stands completely on its own, like Little Green Men or like Trials and Tribulations, you'd go there would still be things that were informing those episodes going on in the context of the chronology of of what's going on right now.
Okay. Well, yeah, then that's our thoughts on it. So what are we watching next time now?
Okay, next time, I had a really tough time deciding what Voyager episode to pick. And because Voyager is a strange animal, because it has, a basic premise of the ship of Voyager is stranded in another quadrant of the galaxy, and they're trying to get home, and it would take them 70 years at normal speed, and so they're trying to figure out ways to get there faster. But the thing is, unlike Deep Space Nine, it is pretty episodic. I mean, most of its episodes stand alone, and it has a very, very, very loose continuity chronology. I mean, there's a lot of continuity, but there's not a lot that you need to know to watch each episode. You know what I mean? It doesn't keep building like you would expect it to with that premise. And also, there's a lot of goofy in Voyager.
Yeah.
And what's funny about Voyager is that a lot of what I like about it ultimately is how goofy it gets. And so I felt the need to show you an episode that was Janeway-centered because, A, she's the captain of the ship, and B, she's arguably very often the most interesting character. And so it's one of those shows where it makes more sense to do kind of a captain-centered thing instead of watching something that's like about everybody, because in Voyager, a lot of the characters, especially early on, are dull enough. I mean, I like them later, but early enough, they're so dull that watching an ensemble cast episode, you wouldn't get anything about any of them. So anyway, we're going to watch an episode that I think is a lot of fun. I don't know if it's good, but it'll give you that sense of, oh, this is how wacky Star Trek gets.
Yeah.
And yet it's still a decent episode. We're going to watch an episode from Season 3 called Macrocosm.
Okay.
And it is kind of famously known as the Janeway turns into Rambo episode.
That sounds awesome.
And I think you'll really enjoy it. I mean, obviously, partly I'm picking these based on the person that I'm reviewing them with.
Oh, totally.
Boy, Enterprise is going to be impossible. I don't know what the heck we're going to watch when we get there. But anyway, so Voyager, we're going to do Macrocosm. I don't know if this is a good pick, but that's what we're going to do.
Okay, cool. Sounds fun. So everybody, tune in for that. That should be just oodles and oodles of fun. And I'm sorry I don't sound excited, but I'm tired. I worked today, and work is hard.
Work is hard.
It is. You don't understand. Or maybe you do. I don't know. You probably do.
Yeah, I don't work for a living. It's okay.
Okay, everyone. Thank you for listening. And until next time, we are your geeky gentlemen, and we will be discussing